Okie dokie, I believe we are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I'm your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names, kicking candy ass, live in living color here with you only on Grande's Graveyard. And tonight, it's not just any ordinary Grande's Graveyard, it's an extraordinary Grande's Graveyard. And why, you might ask? It's because it's a monster movie mash. Yes, and it will be a guaranteed graveyard smash, because if it is not amphibious creatures from the Black Lagoon, and if it is not beautiful princess alien blood queens from the planet Mars, if it is not smog monsters created by you dummies, if it isn't a meteorite crashing down to Earth with a mysterious alien blob looking to eat and devour the entire human race, if it is not giant mosquitoes sucking down alien blood and plasma, if it is not an abominable Yeti snowman hiding in the Himalayas while a man tries to uncover his feelings, his past, and his traumas, well, then it just ain't Grande's Graveyard, because tonight on Grande's Graveyard, we picked one monster movie from the 50s. What? The 60s. What? The 70s. What? The 80s. What? The 90s. What? And the 2000s. What? Yes, because tonight on Grande's Graveyard, it is a celebration of monster movies, and it's a monster movie smash only on the Graveyard. Oh yeah, welcome to the Graveyard, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host of the evening. You may know my name by now. It's John Grande, and I apologize for the little fucking delay. I have no unearthly idea why my laptop just decided to run like a slow molasses fucking thing tonight, but it did, and it took me for hell and ever to get this goddamn thing started. But thankfully, now we're here, we're live, we're in living color, and we're ready to talk about all things monster movies. Now, of course, in that vein, I've decided to bring back the Wheel of Torture. Yes, we have 6 monster movies, each one from a different decade, of course, from the 50s all the way to the 2000s. I'm very, very much excited to be talking about these movies with you guys. Of course, it'll come up as random. I've, of course, watched all 6 of these movies for show prep tonight, but I don't know which one's going to come in what order. Usually I just go in order of decade. I probably would have went 50s all the way to the 2000s, but the Wheel of Torture shall decide my fate tonight on Grande's Graveyard. But that's not all, ladies and gents. I hope you guys are in the spirit of spooky season, because let's face it, we're about halfway through this son of a bitch now, and I'm very much looking forward. We got 2 more graveyard shows at least, probably a third, which is going to be a horror roundtable, which I'm looking forward to. I did make a slight change to the schedule next week, where we'll be discussing all things Stephen King. We'll be reviewing The Langoliers, we'll be reviewing Rose Red, and we'll be reviewing the original and remake of Salem's Lot, the 1979 version, and of course 2024 version, respectively. I decided to skip Return to Salem's Lot for my own sanity, and the Rob Lowe one I don't remember liking at all. But I felt like it would be a little bit redundant doing that, because then it's like, okay, 3 of these 4 are basically the same movie, and then the one oddball out is fucking Return to Salem's Lot. So I was like, you know what? Why don't we just make it a Stephen King night? Let's do something out of the box. So that's kind of why I decided to do that. And of course, like I was saying before, it wouldn't be a monster movie mash without a little bit of a monster movie glass. Yes, of course, on my glass, I'm sporting the legendary Hedorah, aka in America, the Smog Monster. So we've got the Smog Monster glass here, Godzilla cup, Toon Tumblers cup made in the US of A. And I figured, you know what? Why don't we get groovy on the show? I'm not going to show the beverage, but I'm sure you know which beverage I'm drinking by now. If you don't know by now, by God, you're just probably new to the channel. But I say we pour this glass to Hedorah, to all the wonderful monsters out there. Oh yeah, let's get some monster juice going. Oh yeah, boom. Fill her up, fill her up. Everybody, cheers. Thank you so much for having patience for my dumb ass. Cheers to you. Oh, man. That always hits the spot. It's always good to get a nice cold dew rocking. So cheers for the dew. I feel like my headspace is a little bit. Yeah, we're going to move the camera down a little bit here. A little bit better. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. But let's get to the chat. I've been neglecting y'all for far too long, and I started late, so I'm tardy for this party. Ciao, Grande and Graveyardian friends. It's time to let the monster mash out. Oh, yeah. I'm super excited to let the monster mash out with you, Miss C. Hope all is well with you, my friend. That was me. That was me telling you all there's going to be technical difficulties. No worries. Start when you're ready. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, it was just a weird delay tonight, so I do apologize. Let's see. Mateo is here. Ciao, Grande. Ready for this special? Go Mets. Hi to the whole graveyard. Yes, absolutely. I was at Game 3 last night of the Mets and the Dodgers, and the funniest thing, if you catch the very beginning of that broadcast on Fox 5, you will see me. You will see me front and center. They show a shot of the stadium, and then they show the crowd, and I'm the third person in. You could see me waving a towel, screaming like a madman, dressed in all Mets colors. So if anyone has access to watching last night's game, you could see me on television, which is pretty fucking cool. I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. Just as kind of insane. For the first time in a long time, I am here live and in person. James Abernathy, good to have you here live and in living color, my friend. Always good to see your name. As they say in the tagline from the creature from the Black Lagoon, not since the beginning of time has the world known a terror like this. Yes, we'll get all into my creature from the Black Lagoon. Of course, the funny thing is it's the lead actress's birthday today, which I was like, holy cow, what a goddamn coincidence. I had no idea. Now, I know some people will probably accuse me of having an idea, but I swear to you, I didn't have any idea that it was this woman's birthday. So I was like, holy cow, like, what are the goddamn, like, odds of this? I just thought that was just super surprising and crazy. Of course, Julie Adams is her name. It was her birthday today. So happy birthday, Julie. That is just such a small damn world. And of course, we have Slash Fred chimed in. And the Blob remake has many similarities to the original movie, including like the old man being the first victim and the skeptical adults. Absolutely. We got Anthony Chobot does pop cultures and openings. Welcome, Anthony. How are you, buddy? By the way, I'm up to 2005. Man, you're catching up on the memoirs, taking a break from Instagram. All good, man. What an intro. Thank you, man. I try my best. These are always fun. Spin the wheel, make a deal. Oh, it's the wheel of torture, Missy. We're going to spin it. We're going to spin that son of a bitch. I promise you. I think that what made the Gill Man such a famous Universal monster is that he was the final Universal monster. He was in many fan bases, and he was a part of the character in the Monster Squad, of course. And I agree. Yeah, he really was the last of the classic Universal monsters. Like, there's no doubt about that. So we got oh man, I haven't seen this name in a long time, man. It's good to see this guy's name. Good brother. Trenchy is in the house. The Solus Trench Coat. Good to see you, man. I hope all is going well. Trenchy, always happy to have you in the house. That's awesome. Congrats, TV star Grande. Yeah, I know. It was insane. All the text messages I got, people were like, holy shit, man, I just saw you on TV. I was like, man, you know what? This is pretty crazy. But I love Monsters, so I'm ready. Awesome, Trench. Well, hey, one more cheers from the Smog Monster and me, and then we're going to just get the show on the road. Oh, man. That's a tasty-ass beverage. But I say it's time, ladies and gents. I don't know about y'all, but it is time for the Wheel of Torture. Here, we're going to give it a spin. Let's do it. Boom. Let's see what we got. What do we got over here? And holy cow, is it going to be Creature of the Black Lagoon? It looks like it. Yes, we have a winner. Wow, that is so crazy. So first up is the first, of course, movie of these that did come out. It's going to be The Creature from the Black Lagoon from the year 1954. Sorry, I almost said 56. Of course, celebrating its, what would be 70th anniversary this year, which is absolutely wild. And Julie Adams celebrating her birthday today. So happy birthday, Julie Adams. Brief plot synopsis. A strange prehistoric beast lurks in the depths of the Amazonian jungle. A group of scientists try to capture the animal and bring it back to civilization for study. Yes, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, this, of course, like Slasher Fred was mentioning, was the last of the classic Universal monsters. You know, of course, we have Wolfman, we have Frankenstein's monster, we have Dracula, and many others, the Mummy. I mean, there's no doubt that we had plenty. And that era all started about the early 30s. And then this is about to the mid 50s, where horror was changing at this time. This was a transitional period for the genre where a lot of the horror movies that were coming out from a majority standpoint was getting into like the big bug movies, whether it be them, Tarantula, monster movies, basically, is where the genre was going. And also in the earlier half of the 1950s, you have movies like House of Wax, you have movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon that were experimentally shot in 3 dimensions. Now, of course, at this time, 3D was cutting edge of the industry, and everybody was throwing babies in the air about 3D technology. Oh my God, what can we do? And The Creature from the Black Lagoon has to be one of the first. Now, I don't know if it's the first. I'm pretty sure, of course, House of Wax predated this by 1 year or so. And it's quite fascinating when you watch the movie back in 2D. you could see there's so much 3D stuff added. There's a few scenes where the creature's kind of his claw or his fin or whatever you want to call it kind of go out to grab you. There's some interesting scenes with spears coming out the camera. There's a lot of gags that you could kind of sit there and point out and go, oh, okay, that you could see that they were really trying to play around with this 3D technology. Now, of course, when this was released in theaters, a lot of people probably make the assumption, oh, that's got to be the red blue, right? The shitty red blue 3D, right? No, this was the good 3D, the 3D where it was clear glasses and you could go sit in the theater and it actually looked fantastic. Now, of course, when they re-released this movie in the 80s and on home media and stuff like that, you get the red blue and it doesn't look as good. It doesn't create that illusion quite as well as the really good 3D. Like I always say, the clear glass 3D. That's what was seen in the theaters at the time. And this was a pretty big hit. Now, of course, I always thought that the best thing about this movie was the cinematography. I mean, the cinematography in this is just absolutely outstanding. It follows a group of like researchers. They're on the Amazonian bayou, if you will. They're paddling, and then of course they find this kind of claw which leads them to believe, hey, maybe there's a creature out there. And I liked how this was directed in and of the sense that we keep the monster in the shadows for quite some time. And that's the thing you'll see with a lot of these movies, that we'll be talking about here tonight. A lot of them, we don't really see the monster until either the middle or the latter half of the film. And I think that's very smart because you have to build an aura and an essence. And in a way, you have to build the character of the monster before we even see them on screen fully. And that's not easy to do. But if you could feel their presence, if you feel that tense uneasiness, that's when a director's doing his job, because again, you're establishing your evil entity before we even see it in its glory. And I think that's something that this director was able to do here with The Creature from the Black Lagoon. We at one point have these two guys in a tent, and the creature goes into the tent, and the only thing we see is its hand grab a guy. He's screaming around. I thought that was so effective because if we had seen it right off the bat, this is maybe 20 minutes in, it might have hurt the illusion for later on. It may have hurt me from using my imagination as far as what does this creature look like? What is this thing doing? What does it want? Type of situation. And I thought that this particular movie did that really well to kind of build up to that moment where we finally do see the creature from the Black Lagoon. And of course, I do like the ensemble cast. I do like most of the actors in this. Of course, the famous story is Rico Browning was the actor that played the gill man, creature from the Black Lagoon, when he was underwater, but it was Ben Chapman when he was above the water. And of course, they put this kind of latexy, heavy rubber like suit on Rico Browning when he's under the water, because he was like a professional swimmer, a professional diver, if you will. So he could hold his breath underwater for all these crazy amounts of moments. And so they, some of the camera moments and techniques that they use underwater here, I thought were just incredible, especially for 1954. I mean, you're talking a movie that came out 70 years ago, yet the underwater shots look just tremendous even to this day. And I was just super impressed. There's a great scene that kind of, in my opinion, predates Jaws by 21 years, where the beautiful Julie Adams, she's swimming in the water, and we see the gill man kind of swimming after her, but playfully, like kind of, it could grab her at any moment, but it's playfully like kind of teasing it. And I liked how that was done. It kind of brushes past her legs, her feet, and of course she's just like, what was that? But nothing happens of it. I liked that. I thought that was really cool. And then of course, once the crew does encounter the creature, we of course see the human side of horror. We have the people that, hey, we need to kill this thing, and then you have the people, hey, no, we need to take it back to land because we need to study and profit, and that you get that in a lot of monster movies. There's always the corporate greedy person that wants to capitalize. Of course, your King Kongs of the world and things like that, where okay, if we get this, we can make a lot of money with it. Whereas in the reality, the morality of it is you really have to just kill this thing or run the hell away, one or the other. And it never seems to go down that way until bodies start falling by the wayside. And I don't know, man. I thought Creature from the Black Lagoon was just a classic movie. I really enjoyed the music. I thought the pacing of the movie was really good. I mean, this is like an 88 minute, I'm sorry, probably a 78 minute movie without credits. I mean, it's a really, really short film. It's very easy watch. I thought the movie looked gorgeous. It's funny, even 20 something years later from Dracula and Frankenstein, the scope of some of these Universal monster movies had just so much increased because obviously of all the money they made. There was so much more money put into this. And I just thought the 3D, all of it really worked. I would love to see this in theaters in 3D with the good 3D, not that crappy red blue. But it does stand the test of time. And to me, it is a very important monster movie because this was a big part of the transition between the 1950s going into the 1960s of horror. Like I was saying, we had the monster movies were taking over. Of course, as the decade plays out, we get way more. We get The Thing from Another World. We get The Blob, the original. We get Tarantula. We get all these other movies that kind of round out the 50s. Whereas this, it was like, okay, we'll take the new gimmick on the block of the, 3D technology. We'll take the Universal monster movies of yesteryear. We're still kind of being, pushing this thing forward where it kind of fits in with the latter half of the movies too. It's a very well-rounded monster joint, in my opinion. And I really like this movie. I think it's a really good one. One of my faves. I would say, I would put it above The Mummy. I don't know if I put it over Dracula or Frankenstein or Bride, but I would put it over The Wolfman. I know that was probably blasphemy to say to people, but I don't know. I probably would. I like this one. I think it's a fun little adventure monster movie. So that's just my 2 cents. But let's see what you guys have to say about this because I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Thanks, man. Good to be here, dude. Good to have you as always. Both the Blob remake and The Creature from the Black Lagoon both challenge the stereotype of the female character in the Black Lagoon is the girl in danger and the Blob is the strong character. Sure. And I know a lot of people got the sense of King Kong with this. And it was funny, I watched an interview with Julie Adams in preparation for show prep. And like I said, happy birthday. Didn't know it was her birthday. It just kind of worked out that way. Like I saw it today on Instagram. I was like, holy shit. Like I'll talk about Creature from Black Lagoon later. Like, what are the odds? She said something that it shouldn't have, but it goes to show you how sappy of a human being I can be and how much I truly do love the horror genre. She said something like, I could get maybe I could get the exact quote of that she said, because it would be really cool to get the actual freaking quote of her here. Julie Adams, because I don't want to just like paraphrase and botch it on The Creature. Let's see. Black Lagoon. Let's see. I don't want to hold the show up here, but she has this great quote that I don't really want to like paraphrase. Nah, I can't find it. I'm sorry, y'all. I should have prepared that. But she said something along the lines of the creature just wants to be loved, and we all kind of just go out and judge the creature before we know what they truly want and what their intentions are. And she says, if you watch earlier in the film, it seems like it's trying to play with her and things like that. And I was like, I never thought of it that way. She made it sound like, and it's funny because I don't think this movie is going for any of that. I don't think they're going for sympathy for the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I don't think they're going for a love angle. I really, truly don't. But I think it has inspired so much media that has come after it. And this is also a situation and a deal where they have begged so many different people to remake this movie. It's insane. John Carpenter was asked to remake this. James Wan has currently been asked to remake this. John Landis, I believe, was involved in a period of time. There have been so many people in discussions of discussing remaking this movie that it's actually, you can make a documentary on how many fucking failed, like, attempted reboots that there were. Like, it's so crazy to me. But of course, you look at pop culture, you look at a movie like The Shape of Water. The Shape of Water is absolutely taking what Julie Adams said, the whole, what if this could be a love angle? And it's a movie that won Best Picture. I mean, you look at a guy like Guillermo del Toro, he took this same story and kind of put a romantic spin on it. And hey, is it a very unorthodox romantic spin on things? Absolutely. But you see that those seeds were planted here. And I thought that was really unique and really interesting way to look at it. I liked her kind of mentality. It's not the way I don't think it's meant to be. It's not the way it's presented. It's not the way I saw it. But that's the beauty of cinema. So many different people could see it so many different ways. And I just loved how she put it. I wish I could give you the exact quote, but I was like so enlightened by that quote. That was like the best thing I read all week. It just made me smile and kind of get choked up. I was like, wow, this is amazing. They really are. The underwater scenes in this movie are insane. Like all these years later, it's like, wow, like, holy crap. Because again, they were talking about this with the guy who played the creature, Rico Browning. He said, if you made this movie today, it would just be a fucking CGI creature. And that would lose a little bit of its luster. Because here you had a guy that was a professional diver actually in the fucking wetsuit swimming underneath the water. I think that adds so much more heart to the film. It adds so much more charm to the film. Where it's okay, yeah, can you tell it's a guy in a rubber suit? Absolutely. But you could also tell if it's this giant CG effect that's swimming around the water. It just doesn't have the same effect or mojo, in my humble opinion. So I agree with him. I think that the underwater shots were just revolutionary, and the fact that there really were people there really was a creature there that to me drives it all the way home. Creature from the Black Lagoon is pretty much a precursor to Jaws. I agree with that. I think it's an absolute precursor to Jaws. It really does remind you, especially in the scenes where, the creature is chasing after Julie Adams and just playfully, like the beginning of Jaws, we all remember the woman swimming out in the water and, of course, kicking around. At first, she gets pulled down. She thinks it's funny, and then it's really serious. I totally get those vibes here. I thought that was really kind of interesting. It almost feels like Jaws took a play from this book. This movie is only Universal monster movie that was a part of a trilogy. Of course, that's right. There's the return of the creature from the Black Lagoon. What was the third? I forget the third one's name, but there was a trilogy. That's right. And then, of course, there's been 100 different attempts to reboot it, but it never ever happened or came to be. So it's crazy. And the creature design's iconic. I completely agree. It would be interesting to see if these movies in modern 3D. Well, yeah, no, it would have been. I mean, at that time, it's funny. My grandmother was alive at that time. My grandmother would have been 17 years old. Yeah, around 17 years old. And she saw The House of Wax in 3D because she was a teenager. It was what the kids were doing. And she was never a big horror fan, but she said, she was like, as much as I didn't really care for the movie, she did like Vincent Price. I remember she always said she loved Vincent Price and wished she'd done other movies. And she also said the 3D was incredible. She's like, it's better than it was now, because I remember her taking me. This is a real blast from the past. This is probably 20 years ago, seeing Shark Boy and Lava Girl in the theater in 3D, and it was the red blue. And I remember she was like, man, they don't make this like they used to. Like 3D was better when I was a fucking kid, when I was a teenager. So yeah, no, it's funny. It's one of those technologies that in the 50s it was great. In the 80s it was okay, of course, like if the original Friday 13th, but along the way, that technology kind of crumbled a little bit, especially when you're talking about taking it home to home media. In the sequel, Revenge of the Creature, yes, there's Revenge and Return of the Creature. That's right. You had an appearance by the very young Clint Eastwood. That's right. That's a great point, /Fred. Showing that the humans could be the bad guys while the monster could be the victim felt like an homage to Frankenstein's monster. It's great writing. Yeah, I agree. And I think that it was just so beautiful how she put that particular point. And it's, again, I don't know if it's really intended here. It doesn't feel like it to me. It doesn't feel like that's what the director was going for to me. But the fact that she kind of saw it that way and played it that way, it made me see it in a different light. I was like, that's really cool. Like, that's something I never would have saw on my own. So I appreciate always, hearing other people's opinions on watching the same freaking movie, because who knows, sometimes you could see a layer that I miss, or I could see something that you might miss. Like, that's the beauty of hearing everyone's opinion. 50s was a golden era for horror. Lots of these movies have been remade later on. I find this building of the monsters same in The Blob. Surprised that more remakes of this movie were made. Yeah, it is true. I mean, they tried. They really did. They wanted so many different guys to do it and just could never get it off the ground for whatever reason. It's like a curse. It's like it's just not meant to be. I mean, I love James Wan. I'd love to see what James Wan would have to do with it. But you and I both know, I mean, if you've seen either one of those Aquaman movies, it's going to be CG out the ass. And I'm not feeling that, man. That doesn't work for me, brother. One of my favorite unofficial Universal monster movies from the 30s dropped, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Frederick March. Underwater film deserves to be with Dracula, Frankenstein, and others, in my opinion. Well, to mention your point about the Jekylls and Hyde, the opening has Jekyll and Hyde, the 1930s as a POV shot. I like the Frederick March one a lot. I'm in a small minority. I really like the Spencer Tracy Jekyll and Mr. Hyde more. I thought Spencer Tracy of that era was my favorite actor of all those guys, just because he was just so good. And I know that funny enough, he was not a fan of his performance or the movie, or Spencer Tracy is like the one movie he ever did that he denounced was the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And at the time it was made fun of, and they said, oh, he's no Frederick March. It's funny they years later go down the road to act in Inherit the Wind together, which is I think arguably their best movie, both guys' best movie. And it's crazy that they share the screen throughout a lot of it, as does Gene Kelly, which I still to this day don't understand why Gene Kelly is just sitting there doing nothing. Like, motherfucker, like, what the fuck was, hey, agent, I don't want to dance anymore. All right, we'll put you in the fucking front row of this court drama, but you ain't gonna say shit. That's basically what they did with Gene Kelly in that movie. If you see the movie, you know what I mean. I always really like the Spencer Tracy one better, but I do like the Frederick March one as well. That is, the effects work is really good, but it's better in the Tracy version, in my opinion. The creature has transcended the context of its original film, like it really has. I think that's a better way to put it than I put it. It has transcended the context of its original film. The creature walks among us. Never saw The Creature from the Black Lagoon, but always assumed Shape of Water was a loose remake, so it sounded. No, it wasn't. It wasn't completely ripped off. It is a different movie. It's a completely different movie, but it definitely take inspiration, I suppose. The third one, I think, is just the monster being put on trial. Oh, is it really? Oh man, that sounds bad. I'm going through all the Universal monster movies, so we'll get to that one eventually. Oh, cool. I got to see the Spencer Tracy one. Would love to hear your thoughts. I think it's a really good movie. Boris Karloff of Frankenstein played Jekyll and Hyde, and Abbott and Costello meet. Yes. Oh my God. And that's one of the funniest, man. I just love anything Abbott and Costello, but Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein is just, that is one of my favorite movies, man. Really, really great stuff. But of course, Creature from the Black Lagoon, another absolute banger. I would give it like a solid 8.5 out of 10. I really like Creature from the Black Lagoon. But it's time to spin the wheel again, baby. The wheel of torture. Let's do it. 5 films, 5 decades, 60s through the 2000s. What do we got? What do we got? It is, oh boy, we were just talking about the original one from 1958. Why don't we talk about the remake from 1988? This is The Blob from 1988. Brief plot synopsis. A deadly entity from space crash lands near a small town and begins consuming everyone in its path. Panic ensues as shady government scientists try to cover the horrific creature. Yes, The Blob. Man, I don't know how unpopular this is going to be, but in my opinion, this has got to be one of the best horror remakes ever. Like I would have it in my top 3 without a fucking question. There's really no doubt that this is one of my favorite horror movie remakes, and it's really not even close. I love this movie, and I think it's just absolutely brilliantly done. Now, of course, I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding this movie because at the time, they really expected it to be a big hit. Of course, Chuck Russell, the director, he, of course, joined forces again with Frank Darabont, who, of course, goes on to do Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile and The Mist and The Walking Dead, at least the first season. You know, those two together remaking a classic from 1950s, 30 years later, of course, the Steve McQueen movie and the original 1958 Blob. I mean, it just sounded like all the stars had aligned here. And of course, I know the budget has been disputed. At the time, they said 15 million. Chuck Russell scoffed at that and said it was more like 10 million, where half of 10 million was set more towards the special makeup effects. And there was really no money left over at the end of the production in order to promote it. Of course, you have this awful, in my opinion, it's got to be it's funny. It's a top 3 remake ever. That's a bottom 10 poster of all time. What a shitty poster that doesn't sell shit. And I'm sorry, if you like the poster, that's fine. But there is no goddamn doubt in my mind. A big reason why this movie flopped is because of how poorly it was marketed. And that poster is a huge, like, people probably sometimes when I do the verses will say, oh, one sheet versus one sheet, that don't matter. That has nothing to do with the film. I highly disagree. I think that is a big fucking seller of your movie. If I saw this in the cinema, I'm going to see this movie. There's no fucking question. Those are awesome artworks. There's no doubt. If you see bad artwork, it just might turn your cheek the other way to whatever's going down in the next theater to the left or the right or wherever. I think this poster, man, what a horrible poster for such a good movie. And man, it's a shame because this is a great movie, and it only made $8.2 million at the box office against the budget, again, disputed of $15 to $10 million. But either way, it was a huge fucking bomb financially. And all the stars did align to make this great movie, but nobody went to go see said movie. And of course, it becomes a cult hit later on because look at the names involved, right? You have Kevin Dillon as the lead kind of badass guy. You have Shawnee Smith, who I mean, at this time was just so beautiful. And I grew up seeing her in the Saw movies, where she was playing crazy junkie lady, but still just something about her was so attractive. And she's great here as the kind of like female heroine of the movie. And I just love this movie. I think this is great. Of course, like I was saying, Chuck Russell coming off Dream Warriors, because that movie is so good, he gets the job to direct The Blob here. I think he had a grand slam, ran out of the park, and caught the ball himself. I mean, this is such a well-directed film, and to me is a highlight reel for great special makeup effects, which to me are quintessential when you're talking about great monster movies, especially from the 1970s onward. We can see a lot from the 50s, and a lot of it looks dated, especially if you watch a movie like Tarantula. The shit looks dated. You can watch The Blob tomorrow, and it will still look like it was made yesterday. I mean, that's how great. To love, my favorite kill in the movie is the guy that gets sucked into the fucking sink. Like that, to this day, I'm like, how did they do that? It looks incredible. It is truly movie magic. As this man in this diner, kind of reaches down into the drain, and the Blob pulls this guy in through the drain. I mean, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, like, holy shit, man, that is absolutely crazy. You have the one gag of the guy, he's with the chick in the car, and he's like, oh, I'll make you a drink, and he has all these fucking fruit punches and drills and shenanigans in his trunk, and I always thought, I just got a big laugh out of that. We saw it in the theater a few months ago in Huntington in the 35 millimeter all night horathon. And man, the crowd was just roaring, laughing at that. It was just such a funny moment. And of course, he gets back in the car, he fixes up the drink, he looks, and her face just like melts off and just springs to life in him. I mean, that is horrifying, man. To this day, I think that's some of the most horrifying shit I've ever seen. It's so well done. Just great stuff. Of course, you do have the scene in the hospital with Jack Nance, which I always thought was funny. Like, oh hey, so and so, he's dead. What do you mean he's dead? He came in with a hurt hand. This fucking guy's gone. You have the one guy who we think might be the male lead. He gets devoured by the Blob, and that's one of the DVD covers of him reaching out through the Blob, which I liked that visual. Again, though, kind of a weak for a poster art or cover art. I mean, I really like Kevin Dillon in the movie too, is this like out of town bad boy type of character who, at the beginning of the movie, he's trying to make a jump on his motorcycle. And that, of course, later on plays into the movie when it gets into the third act of adventure. I just think this movie's a lot of fun. I think it just has great pacing to it, a great energy. It's, it's distinctly of its era. It really does feel 1980s and in the best of way possible, in my opinion. I just really have a blast with this movie. I think it's great from top to bottom. And it's laps where it needs to. It has great special makeup effects. It has those grimy, I guess, government-esque characters. Of course, the lead one, I always remember him from an episode of The Golden Girls, but his name is Joe Seneca. He plays Dr. Meadows in this. He's like the evil, guy that works with the government / containment unit, and he's willing to let all these people die in the town in order to contain the Blob and get it for personal greed. And there's all those themes are here as well. Like none of that's missed out. You have the great sequence in the movie theater where everyone's out to see a movie for the night, and it's like a regular horror movie, it's like a slash movie, and the Blob starts dripping from the ceiling and people just kind of going crazy. I mean, I love that stuff. The stuff in the sewer towards the final act, just the intensity of that. And I know people want to go crazy about, oh, Art killed the kid in the new Terrifier. Like, okay, yeah, the Blob eats a kid in this movie, like, and you see him, all of his bones, and it's like horrifying. You're like, oh man, this just ate this kid. Just tremendous. This is a great movie to me. I love this one. I really do. I think this has got to be in consideration for one of the best horror remakes out there ever. But I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts. So let me take a ghoulie gander at the chat. As Ant-Man25, what's up, John? Hey, what's going on, Anthony? Hope all's well with you, buddy. Hope all's going well in college. Dude, I just researched the blog recently. It still hits, man. Dude, it really does. I mean, I love the 50s version. The 50s version of Steve McQueen is very good as well. And I do know there's the whole story where they asked Steve McQueen's son to be in this as like a nod to him. And he was like, oh, I don't want to disrespect my dad. I was like, what, buddy, what? Like, I always thought that was the weirdest, like, being in a remake of a movie your dad starred in called The Blob is not fucking disrespectful. I don't care what light you want to look at it in. The Blob came out the same year as Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and both movies have similar elements. You have the meteorite crashing and the teens trying to warn the adults of intergalactic danger. I never thought of it that way, Fred, but you're right. I agree with you, John. Top 3 best remake maybe together with The Fly and The Thing. Yeah, no, it's funny. All 3 of those were remakes of films that came out in the 50s, but it seems like this is, I guess, a perfect way to bring this up because we the Wheel of Torture kind of decided it this way, right? We started in the 50s where, like I said, you did have incredible cinematography in The Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm not denying that, but by the time you get to the 1980s, the special makeup effects were just simply at their all-time peak. You're just at an absolute all-time peak. And even if you look at Chuck Russell's movie before this of the, Want to Get High and the Welcome to Prime Time, bitch, and the Freddy with the marionette and cutting the guy open, like the way that was done and special makeup effects had really hit a peak 30 plus years after the 1950s. And all 3 of these movies, whether it be The Fly, The Blob, The Thing, all 3 of them are great films. They're well directed. They're well acted. Around the board, great movies. But I think what really makes them stand out above their original predecessors are the special makeup effects and how they had progressed with the times. It's one thing where in the 80s, it just had feel like it was perfected, and this movie is no exception, and neither are the other 2 that you mentioned. It's a really good point. I wish the sheriff stuck around longer. I really like this character. I do too. When you watch this movie, you really get the sense that he's going to be a player because they have the whole scene in the diner where he's hitting on the woman and I get off at this time. So I thought that was going to be a subplot, like you'll have Shawnee Smith and Kevin Dillon on one coin, and then maybe this older couple on the other, and then maybe their parties will converge by the 3rd act. That's what I thought too. It feels very much like they're setting up for that. But no, he gets his ass killed, and then she gets killed in the phone booth, which I thought was so claustrophobic. He's trying to call him, and then you see his face, and he's all like, melting and deteriorating. I fucking remember I first saw that. I was like, didn't see that coming. I thought that was a really, really well crafted like kind of fake out to me as a viewer where I thought he was going to be a main player and her as well. And they get picked off pretty much like a half hour or so in. So I agree with you. But I thought in a good way that surprised me. Like it didn't piss me off at all. It was just like, whoa, okay, you're willing to kill these guys off. Who knows who's next? And, the answer is, a little kid eventually. The original movie did include a sequel, Beware of the Blob, which I have not seen that. I have not seen Beware of the Blob. Did that come out in 1959? Or did that one actually transcend into the 60s? I'd be curious to know that one. This movie includes a small appearance by a very young Eric Elaniak. Okay. The blob kills are awesome. I love the sink scene. Oh, the sink scene, dude, that is like one of my biggest wonders of the world. Like, I wish I was there when they filmed that because I can't even explain to you. I don't know how they filmed that. Like, it still looks great. And it's like, every time I see that, I get inspired. I'm like, man, like, this is incredible. This movie is a callback to the original movie theater massacre. That's right. Absolutely. Hey, is it on my end or is Grande breaking up a bit? Am I breaking up? Oh no, that's not good. Well, if I am, let me know. I'm sorry if I am. That's no good. Every time the blob took someone out, I cheered. Just looks like great love. The effects, but also you feel bad because the characters are likable. Well, most of them. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it is a movie where you can kind of get behind the blob itself. 9 on my end too, but it seemed to stop. Oh, okay, so it was happening for a little bit. I'm sorry. It stopped on my end too after I posted figures. Okay, sorry. I liked the biker's character arc and how the Snowcats mechanics words came full circle in the end. Yes. I didn't even think the ice maker. That's how they end up taking it out. They fucking freeze the blob to death. I love that. Joe Senek was in the longer version of the music video to The Way You Make Me Feel by Michael Jackson. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. I always remembered him from the Golden Girls episode where he and Sophia are they become friends and they're like sitting on the beach and stuff. And then the twist at the end is he has Alzheimer's and it's like a really sad episode, but I always loved that actor. And I always thought it was like cool to see him play like an evil character in this. You're good at least for now, but I'm glad it just wasn't on my end. Okay. I have no idea. I apologize. Usually it tells me if there's something going wrong. So if there is something going wrong, let me know. I would say I put the blob over the thing. I just enjoy the monster more, but they're both great remakes. Oof, to rank those 3 remakes, that would be a challenge. The Blob, The Thing, and The Fly. Holy shit. That would maybe a triple threat for down the road of a versus episode. I swear it always seems to circle back to Michael Jackson. Thriller is one of my most iconic pieces of Halloween media. And of course, it's spooky season. It's not Shawnee Smith who gets killed in the phone booth. It's Candy Clark. Yes, that's what I was saying. I'm saying she's the character in the diner that the cop is trying to like hit on. And then of course, she's like, oh, I get off at this time, gives him the thing. And then of course, she gets in the phone booth later to call him only to see that he's like deteriorating in front of him. And then bam, just incredible. Really great stuff. Yeah, it didn't piss me off either. Just a bummer. Like, oh man, but it also made me feel everyone is expendable. Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good thing in a monster movie, I think. Is the girl who Elliot kisses in class in E.T. Okay, I was going to say I didn't know who that was. This movie is just so tight and does everything it just needs to do and nothing more or less. Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it. I think he made a damn good monster movie here, and I think The Blob from 1988 is just a classic. I really, really like this movie. It's a shame that at the time it just didn't hit. It just didn't sell, and I do think that was because of poor marketing and a poor poster and a lot of different factors, but it is, over time to me become one of the best. So this is one that I really like. I really am a big fan of The Blob from 1988. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen this movie, to go and see it. Now, I don't know where it's streaming, but I do know there is a Blu-ray, and there even is a 4K, I believe, now from Scheme Factory. So if you're interested, you could always go that route. But let's spin the Wheel of Torture as I'm going to take a sip of my beverage as the wheel spins. So let's go. Wheel of Torture time. Oh, baby. All right. Looks like we're going to the 1990s as we have a winner. Yes, this is Mosquito from the year 1994. Let's click here and get you all a brief plot synopsis. A violent massacre caused by human-sized mosquitoes forces the lone survivors to band together in a fight for survival as the mosquitoes continue their onslaught. Yes, Mosquito. Now, this, in I guess relative to these movies that we're talking about tonight, is probably by far the weakest one. This is not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. This is a absolute B movie. Like, there's no way around that. Like, there's nothing, like, you can't find any A tier quality things in this. But I will say, for a B movie, the effects are very fun. The acting is very, capital B, bad. I mean, the acting in this movie is quite terrible. And I mean, this is a fun creature to get into, so we can just get into this. Of course, this stars the one and only, the late great Gunnar Hansen. Gunnar Hansen, yes, the man who played Leatherface himself. He stars in this movie as Earl the bank robber. He and his brothers are in this. And of course, there are these other people, of course, that they encounter along the way. And basically what happens is a spaceship crashes to Earth and the mosquitoes start to suck the blood out of these aliens that crash land and die. And through sucking the blood of the aliens, the mosquitoes start to grow to these abnormal sizes, and they're basically giant mosquitoes. And what happens is they kind of fly around and they just start causing massacre. And it's up to Gunnar Hansen and crew to take out these mosquitoes and their swarm and their nest. And okay, while this is not a great movie at all, I won't lie to you, I laughed my ass off watching this, and I was entertained from moment one to the end. I was thoroughly entertained by this movie. There is an insane scene where this couple is having sex in a tent. Jason Goes to Hell style. Every sex in a tent, they're rolling around, whatever. Fucking the guy gets out to go take a piss. It's very horribly acted. He's taking a pee. All of a sudden, this giant mosquito flies to the fucking base of this tent. It kind of crawls in, and it's using its nose to kind of like feel the woman's ass and legs. And she's like, oh, stop it, stop it. She's not turning around to realize it's a fucking giant mosquito. This giant mosquito decides then to fucking put its fucking whatever, like its horn to suck blood into this lady's right ass cheek and starts sucking blood at this lady. And she's like, ah! Dude, I nearly fell off the couch laughing. It was so fucking funny. Like, it, oh my God, is one of the funniest things. Then the idiot drunk guy, he comes back trying to, zip up his pants. He zips and he just goes, So you get the idea that he zipped up too fast and he runs back into the tent. He's, no, get out my girlfriend, you son of a bitch, giant mosquito. Stop sucking the blood out of her ass cheek. I mean, That's the type of movie you have here. There's a scene where one of the guys, he's running away and the mosquito is attacking him. He's like, help, help. He's running with his arms up. And fucking the guy goes, I got you, bro. He's showing the gun and then boom, shoots the guy in the chest. And he just drops to his knees and dies. He's like, oh shit, I missed. And then Gunnar Hansen, without, missing a beat, boom, guns the fucking mosquito everywhere. I thought that was a blast. Like the effects in this movie are actually pretty good. Considering this was a movie made for $200,000, this was a direct-to-video movie. $200,000, I'm pretty blown away by how good the effects were. Now, there, of course, was a movie the year before this in 1993 called Skeeters. And Skeeters was, of course, the original title to this movie. They had to change it to Mosquito because Skeeters was going to beat it to the brim. Now, of course, Skeeters is a bigger piece of shit. If this is a B movie, Skeeters is a D movie, probably an F movie, where you don't barely see the mosquitoes. When you do, they're not even that big. They're not that impressive looking. This, I will say, they are that big and they are that impressive looking. Where this movie cripples itself is the bad acting. And man, you can just really see they had no money here. Gunnar Hansen, God rest his soul, but that guy couldn't act at all. And you could also say this, and people probably get really pissed, but I am honest with you as always. I'm never going to bullshit you people, never. Gunnar Hansen, the genre to Gunnar Hansen was a business. He was not anyone that meets him will probably know what I'm talking about. He was a businessman. He wanted to make money. And this was a type of movie where, yeah, they hired him because he used to play Leatherface. And there is a scene where Gunnar Hansen pulls out a fucking chainsaw and goes, it's been about 20 years since I've carried one of these. Of course, this being 1994, Texas Chainsaw Massacre being 1974. So that's the reference, if you will, that, okay, Leatherface has his chainsaw back. And he does chainsaw one of the mosquitoes and you get all this blood and stuff. But he wasn't a talented actor. There's no denying that. Although he did say of all the movies he worked on, this was his favorite, which is pretty wild considering this man was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This was his favorite over that. So go figure. There are some interesting sequences, like they're boarding up in the house at the end. It feels a lot like Night of the Living Dead almost, where they tell one guy, oh, look in the basement. And he won't do it. And then, of course, later on they find the giant swarm is in the basement, like all these eggs. And they're like, did you see this when you looked in the basement? He's like, I never looked. And they're like, you son of a bitch, we could have avoided all this. And they're boarding up the house and stuff. This is a turn your brain off B movie with horrible acting and funny behind the scenes stories that are almost more interesting than the movie itself. Now, of course, there was an infamous story on this movie where the original special makeup effects man, was not the guy they ended up crediting. Matt Hundley was the original special makeup effects. Matt Hundley was the guy that came in to replace the original special makeup effects man. This man's identity is unknown to this day. We don't know who the original choice was to do the makeup effects, but halfway through filming, the original special makeup effects guy said, I'm going to be right back, guys. I'm going to go get a pack of smokes. And the guy never fucking came back. The guy never came back. He just said, fuck you, I'm getting out of fucking... He just drove down to the 7-Eleven, picked up a pack of Marlboro Hards, and fucking drove home. He was done. I'm not filming this fucking mosquito movie for you. I ain't getting paid enough to do this shit. I ain't getting paid at all. And they fucking called Mark Hundley and said, hey, man, how would you like to be the lead of special makeup effects? This guy just went for a pack of fucking Marlboros and didn't come back. So that's the type of movie you're working with here. Motherfuckers for $200,000 movies were just decided, hey, you know what? This ain't worth it. I'm going to the smoke shop. I'm going to call it a fucking day. Which, to me, I could only imagine his side of the story. Now, okay, morally, was that unprofessional of him? Probably. But I could only imagine working on a set this low budget with this lack of talent behind the camera and in front of it. And, you're doing special makeup effects. That is good. The special makeup effects are the star of this movie. There's no doubt, right? To see all the stuff around you going the way it is, no wonder he fucking walked off the set and just decided, hey, I'm going for a smoke. I ain't coming back. And, of course, they hired Mark Hundley. But, man, the effects still hold up. It's not like the effects fall apart because that happened. And I would love to know who the original guy was. It's never been disclosed who that was, and I would love to know just because it's such a funny story. But the movie itself, hey, if you want to burn 90 minutes, if you want to laugh and be entertained by some stupid shit, this is totally the movie for you. This is not a good movie by any means. This is not anywhere near any of the rest of these. There's no way. This is easily the worst one that we'll be talking about. But I don't know, man. I had fun with it. I thought this was a dumb fun time. So that is Mosquito from 1994. Let's see. I think we were here. I haven't seen this one. Well, dude, I do recommend it. I think you'd like this one. I really do. I think Trenchy, you would appreciate this movie. Mosquitoes only on the graveyard. Yes, gotta love some mosquitoes. I find this movie a disaster, perfect for 90s horror. Yeah, they really, that's one way to put it. That's one way to put it. Yeah, it is a fucking disaster, really. But it does. I can't explain it. It did entertain me in a way. Like, it was so fucking stupid. It was so poor that I couldn't help but laugh at it, like in a like a Roger Corman way. I don't know. It's nothing great though. It really isn't. I'm not trying to sell you this movie as a fucking home game. That sounds fun. It is a little fun. They sure don't make giant bug movies anymore because one of the most famous giant bug series was the Tremors series. Yeah, and it's funny. I was so close to going with Tremors, but I wanted to do ones that are lesser talked about. And it's funny, even though you picked the Universal Monster movie, it's like that's one of the lesser talked about Universal Monster movies. Like all these, I feel like aren't talked about enough. So that's why I made a big reason to spotlight them in this Monster Mash celebration on the graveyard here tonight. So Mosquito is one of those movies for me. It's stupid, it's bad, it's silly. But I don't know, man. I had fun watching it. It's nothing to run home about though. So we can remove that one from the wheel of torture, and we go ahead and spin the wheel. Let's make that deal, baby. What do we got? And oh boy. It looks like we're going to my favorite decades in the history of film. Yes, the 1970s, of course, over from our good friends from Japan. This was called Godzilla versus Hedorah. But in my opinion, this is one time where the Americans got the title better. And to me, it's not the best Godzilla movie, but I'd be damned if I couldn't say it's not my favorite. This is my favorite Godzilla movie, God damn it. This is Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, a toxic, ever-evolving alien life form from the dark, gaseous nebula arrives to consume rampant pollution, and neither humanity nor Godzilla may be able to stop him. Yes, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Now, of course, this was directed by Yoshimitsu Banno, who, of course, infamously after this movie came out, was really heavily criticized and hated by the producers at Toho. They had a big problem with this movie. They considered this the worst of the original golden era of Godzilla films. They basically, the producer, the lead producer, he was in the hospital at the time, and he literally left the hospital one night to go see it in the theater. He wanted to see it with a crowd. He really wanted to, okay, I'm lying here. I've been well, but I really want to see what you did. He was very disappointed. Now, there's been a lot of different stories. How disappointed was he? Was it this big animated, you son of a bitch, you'll never work in this town again? I don't think it got to those extents. That's at least what Mr. Banno has said in recent interviews, of course, prior to his passing. But what happened was he was confronted by the producers. They were not happy with the film, and they said, listen, this is one of the weakest ones. We're really disappointed with what you did. We will keep you on as a consultant, but you'll never direct another Godzilla film again. And they stayed true to their word. He never directed another Godzilla film after this. Others, aside from archival footage from this movie, you will never see Yoshimitsu Banno's film, making another movie. It never happened again. So this was controversial at the time. And this was also, to me, in my opinion, my favorite Godzilla movie because of how grand it is. And the idea of the anti-Godzilla being the opponent. Of course, one, the Smog Monster, which I do have on my glass here, which is probably my favorite Godzilla opponent, and for many reasons. Reason number one, I love how distinctly 70s the movie is. It has a lot of that 70s colors. It almost looks like a giallo in some ways. It's a lot of blues, a lot of reds, a lot of deep purples and magentas, and just a lot of beautiful colors. And the film is so grand, where there's these beautiful song sequences. There's these weird psychedelic horror sequences where we're in this nightclub and everybody's wearing fish masks. There are these interesting sequences where there are people outside exercising. The Smog Monster will kind of fly past them, and they all disintegrate and turn to bone and dust because of the Smog Monster's devastating gaseous effects on the human body. And to me, the whole psychology of it, right? Godzilla has fought up until this point, of course, King Ghidorah and Mothra, which is a classic, Godzilla versus Mothra. You had Godzilla facing, of course, the sea monster, which is one of the weaker ones. There's no doubt about that. A giant lobster versus Godzilla is basically what the movie is. Whereas this, I thought, was the one of the few times where they took a look at the opponent and said, what can we do to make the opponent as anti-Godzilla but like Godzilla at the same time as we can? And what they decided to do was, hey, look, Godzilla was this creature created from the atomic bomb and nuclear contamination. And of course, through the war, of course, Godzilla is born and Godzilla takes over and Godzilla destroys. It was all because of a man-made war that this, creature is born, the king of the monsters, if you will. But on the other side of that coin, that's what Yoshimitsu Banno did so smart with the smog monster was, what's something that we could create? What's something that was created by man that would, inadvertently cause another monster? He looked at pollution. And what if pollution created this monster to take over the world and fight Godzilla? The ultimate Godzilla being Superman in this movie, as the lead kid says, Godzilla's Superman. He's a good guy in this movie. And of course, the smog monster being the ultimate Lex Luthor or Bizarro. Basically Bizarro. It works perfectly because the anti-Godzilla created from all of our pollution and mistakes and lack of care about the earth. I liked that commentary. I'm not usually one for social commentary, but I thought it worked here in a Godzilla movie. And that, let's be honest, the golden era was running stale. Like, by the time you get to Godzilla's Revenge, holy shit, it was time to end this shit and to give the reins to Banno and him hitting the home run that I consider this movie to be and making this the most grand of the golden era Godzilla movies. I thought this was the perfect, reboot for that whole franchise. Now, it didn't work. Like I said, it wasn't a big hit. None of the producers liked it. 3 years later, Mechagodzilla, I think it's Return or Destroy. The last one is like Mechagodzilla Destroys whatever the fuck. I forget the name title of the movie. But that's the last one you get, or Revenge or Attack of Mechagodzilla. And that Terror of Mechagodzilla, that's the one. Sorry. Then you get a 12-year absence of Godzilla movies, or like an 8-year absence. It's crazy that this was one of the last ones made up until then, and they were so disappointed with this, where I think this is one of the best ones. You have, of course, the iconic design of the smog monster, where they purposely made the eyeballs look like female genitalia. Yeah, that looks like a fucking vajayjay, does the eyes of the smog monster, which I thought was so funny. The way it kills people, I thought was great. The way it could be this kind of slimy creature, but then it could fly around like a space shuttle. I thought that was so creative, and shoot laser beams. I thought that was so creative. There's the great scene where he drops Godzilla down almost to his death and then just splurges all this goo and muck. And Godzilla is lying in this pile of shit and has to get up and avenge himself and fight. There's the classic scene that has been shown a million times. If you're a Godzilla fan, you cannot go on the internet without seeing this particular scene where Godzilla flies to chase the smog monster. The smog monster turns into the space shuttle, starts flying away, and Godzilla jumps up, curls the tail, uses the atomic breath to fly. And they use this great dun, 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 as the fucking smog monster's flying away. Godzilla's coming back in reverse. I mean, I just loved that. And to me, if you were ever going to show a kid a Godzilla movie, what's the best Godzilla movie to show a child that you're trying to get into these monster movies? There's no other starting point to me than this one. I think this is the perfect Godzilla movie for a kid because it's all, again, through the perspective of a child. The lead character is this little kid who believes Godzilla is his Superman. And there's these great scenes where he's on the roller coaster and, he's on a roller coaster with his family, and there's a brief point where they stop the footage, and you could see this cutout of Godzilla in the right background. You see Godzilla, he sees him, he goes, there he is, he's right there. And they're like, oh no, you didn't see him, that wasn't him. And the great introduction of Godzilla through the dawn. I mean, I love this movie. Now, there's no doubt there are better from a technical standpoint. Godzilla -1 beats the shit out of this movie. There's no doubt. The original Godzilla probably beats the shit out of this movie. But from a favorite standpoint, from a Godzilla movie that is, the most well-rounded. I look no further than this. I love the opponent. I love the social commentary. I love the colors. I love the music, the great songs about pollution, the fucking kid having, his perspective, the essence of horror, really, that is kind of sprinkled throughout it. The smog monster fucks people up and pretty much disintegrates them alive as it flies past. Like, that is some dark ass shit, man. Like, what a evil monster the smog monster was. And then the whole finale where they're trying to trap him. I mean, I love this movie. To me, man, this is one of the best Godzilla movies out there. I fucking love Godzilla versus the smog monster, man. I really think that what, all due respect to the producers that did not like this movie and consider this the weakest of that era, which I think is crazy considering, you also had Revenge of Godzilla and Destroy All Monsters and stuff. I just think that it's crazy that, they thought this was the weakest one. But in my opinion, this is definitely a banger Godzilla movie. I really like this one. Let's go here. I got to see this one too. Heard good things about it from my friend Ethel, who's a big Godzilla fan. Oh, cool. Shout out to Ethel. The Godzilla versus movies took the whole Godzilla, which had been a villain, and turned him into a heroic character. Yes. And I liked that. I liked the babyface turn for Godzilla. I thought this was nice. And I thought, like, the creativity of the villain and the whole psychology of the villain was just something that I just got behind, like, wholeheartedly. I just love the idea of that. Like, okay, you were created from atomic war and nuclear fusion. Okay, we're going to have the villain created from, pollution and destroying the earth. And, the smog monster appears. I love that. I thought that was really intelligent to do. When you said it's like a giallo, I picture Godzilla with black gloves. Yeah. Imagine Alberto Lindsay or fucking Mario Bava or Sergio Martino directing a Godzilla movie. In my movie, Godzilla will have the black gloves. But it's I don't know how to explain it. It's very psychedelic and it has colors like a giallo. Like, I can't explain it if you haven't seen a movie. But if you do see the movie, it's free to watch on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing. The colors in the movie, you will totally see that palette. That is very much like an Italian color palette to me. And I thought that was such a cool thing. There's no other Godzilla movie that has colors like that. There's no other Godzilla movie that has the animation sequences of the smog monster drinking up gasoline and fossil fuels and all these things to grow bigger and stronger. I thought that was such a creative way to have your villain grow. Like let's use animation. Like, let's throw the kitchen sink at this thing. And I loved that was Bono's mentality. And I know that, years later on, while he never got the chance to direct another Godzilla movie, he was the big pioneer of the Monsterverse that we have now. There wouldn't be a Monsterverse without Yoshimitsu Banno. Like, he was a big pusher and proponent of it. And while I don't like a lot of the Monsterverse movies, there's no doubt that it would have been curious to see, had they liked this movie, had they thought he did a good job, who knows the quality of Godzilla films we may have gotten after this in the 70s and 80s. And that's going to forever be a big question mark, a big what if, because they didn't like it. They didn't enjoy his vision. They thought what he did, was a disgrace to the character, which is just so wild to me because I thought it was the best thing the character had done pretty much since Godzilla versus Mothra or Godzilla versus Kong. I mean, the original I'm talking about. In the original Rugrats series, I think that the character Reptar was inspired by Godzilla. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Godzilla vs. King Kong, the OG, is my favorite. Gotta love Kong's magical, unexplained electrical powers. Oh, dude, I love the original Godzilla Kong. And I have reviewed that. I did one other episode where it was monster versus episodes, where I did Godzilla versus Kong, Wolfman meets Frankenstein. I did Freddy versus Jason, and I did Sadako versus Kayako, which that was a really fun episode to do if you have time to check that out. That was a fun one for sure. James Abernathy says, been so long since I've seen this. Godzilla movies were on so much when I was younger. The sillier and the more innocent ones always got more showings. Yeah, and I think this is one of those for sure. Even though it does have that nightmare fuel, no pun intended with the fuel part, it's in there. I definitely think this is a great one to start kids off. And it does have, like I said, that horror adjacent stuff in it. Yeah, I know that scene. Okay. I would say Destroy All Monsters is a good one to start kids on too. Godzilla's son, a young kid learning together to stick up to bullies. Sure, that's a good point. Hey, Destroy All Monsters is a classic. I meant All Monsters Attack. If I said Destroy All Monsters, I'm sorry, but the All Monsters part is why I said Destroy All Monsters. I do like Destroy All Monsters too. Me and Andrew talked about it. It's All Monsters Attack, which is what I meant to say. So sorry. Godzilla says, I have to learn to fight my own battle. I have to learn to fight my own battles. That's right. I remember that episode. Yeah, no, I love this one. To me, of this list, man, this might be my favorite. I don't know. It's either this or The Blob. I mean, these are just two great movies. And Godzilla versus the Smog Monster to me is everything what a good 1970s monster movie should be. The king of the monster facing an anti version of himself. You know, a grand film with a bunch of things of music and horror and colors and psychedelic nature. I just think it's a fucking great movie. So long live Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Now let's spin the wheel and make a deal. What's our second to last movie of the evening here? We're going to get, I think it's going to be from the 1960s. Yes. All right. From the 1960s, of course, here it is going under its Spanish title of Planeta Sangriento. But, of course, here in the States, it was called Queen of Blood from 1966. In 1990, funny enough, this one takes place in the future, but it was shot in the 60s, released in the 60s. In 1990, aliens contact Earth announcing their visit. Their ship crashes on Mars. A rescue team from Earth is dispatched to investigate the alien crash site. Yes, The Queen of Blood, directed by Curtis Harrington. Of course, this one has a really great cast. You have John Saxon as the lead of this movie, Dennis Hopper as a supporting role. You have Basil Rathbone, who, from what I understand, was only there for like a day. Like, they filmed all his shit in a day, and it shows. This is a really cheap movie, there's no doubt. This one may have even had the lowest budget of all the ones we're talking about here tonight, but I do think that this was a huge precursor as to what Ridley Scott's Alien would become just 13 years down the road. Now, of course, this stars a group of NASA astronauts, and of course, John Saxon is the lead. He, of course, has a love interest in the movie, played by Judy Meredith, and Dennis Hopper's one of the crew. Basil Rathbone's like the captain, but we don't see him that much because he was only there for a fucking day. They're on this mission to Mars. A lot of the first half hour is them talking about the mission, which I think really crippled the movie. Whereas it's like you maybe got 15 minutes of exposition and then they're on the rocket. That might have helped the movie pacing wise. But it's about 30 minutes of conversation about going to Mars. Then they go. And basically what happens is they find this alien woman, and she's all green, and she has this beautiful sinister smile. And they're like, what the hell is up with this lady? We got to take her back. We got to take her back to study her. And basically what happens is, as they're isolated with her one by one, she like cuts their wrists or cuts their neck and basically sucks the blood out of them. She's like a hemophiliac, if you will. She wants to get your blood. It's similar to like movies like Martin, basically. Like, she just wants to get your blood. And I mean, this was an interesting precursor. Now, it's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. It really suffers from a poor budget. The transfer that I watched on the movie, it's on Tubi. It is one of the worst looking transfers I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it looks like it was shot on a fucking potato. Like, it's really rough looking around the edges. But I do see a lot of like inspirational stuff that I do believe Ridley Scott saw in this movie, especially when you get to stuff like Alien Covenant, where there's a scene where this guy finds these eggs and they're like pulsating eggs. And he's like, oh, these are the alien eggs. When you get to Alien Covenant, that's exactly what David or whatever, the Michael Fassbender character, I forget the guy's name in that piece of shit movie, Alien Covenant, but the eggs that he's hoarding on the ship at the end, I was like, holy shit, that reminds me of Queen of Blood. Like, that's very Queen of Blood. Like, holy, I see what you did there. I thought that was kind of clever. Now, the Blood Queen, of course, she was a personal friend of the director, and this was a situation where I believe one of the producers wanted to hire like someone who was more attractive, I suppose. Like, they really wanted to get somebody who was like more, I guess, attractive looking. Florence Marley plays the alien queen. She doesn't have any lines, but she did do a good job pulling off this very sinister smile and like devious look. I thought she did a good job in the role. I don't know. This one just suffered a lot of pacing issues for me. And like, this was a different monster movie in and of the fact where it's like, I see more the groundwork and kind of the setting up of a movie that would be perfected in 1979 with Ridley Scott's Alien. But you saw a lot of movies like that at this time. Like Mario Bava the year prior in 1965 does Planet of the Vampires, which again is very similar to the setup of Ridley Scott's Alien. It's a bunch of people who go to a planet and they encounter creatures that are trying to kill them, and then again, that movie has a lot of beautiful colors in it. And this one, I mean, maybe it did, but you just couldn't tell because it was just so poorly transferred. But I don't know. I thought this was fine. I thought this had sort of a charm to it. I liked seeing John Saxon and fucking Dennis Hopper interact. I thought that was cool. Basil Rathbone was along for the ride. It's sad that he died very shortly after the making of this movie. Like, I don't think Basil Rathbone even lived a year after this. So rest in peace to Basil Rathbone, of course, I always say from Son of Frankenstein. I always loved that movie a lot. He's great in that movie. But here, this is one that it has a lot of stuff that would go on to inspire better movies. So if you're one of those people where it's like, oh, I want to see, where the ideas came from, or I want to see maybe a movie that kind of laid the groundwork for what was to come, this is a quintessential one to watch. It's not even half as good as Planet of the Vampires from Bava, but, it's not the worst thing in the world either. I think this one deserves a better release where you could really sit down and judge the movie without really having to squint at how poorly the thing looks. So this is one that it does suffer from that, unfortunately, but I don't think it's the worst movie in the world. There is an interesting scene towards the end where one of the crew members, she smacks the queen alien and it's a little cut and she bleeds out. And that's when John Saxon comes with the idea where he goes, oh my God, she must have been royalty because she's a hemophiliac. And thus the title Queen of Blood. And I was like, I never made much sense. I'm like, that doesn't make much sense to me. Like, how would that make her royalty? But I don't know. I mean, I guess it made sense to them. So Queen of Blood, nothing great. It's like, it's cheap even for like a Roger Corman production looking. Like it looks cheap. It smells cheap. It's a really cheap movie. But, if you like horror history, if you always like to, see where shit came from, this is definitely one to seek out for that reason. But if you're looking for a very fun, entertaining monster movie, this just ain't it, brother. This just ain't it. But it's not bad. It's not terrible. Mad Godzilla was always kind of a joke to me. Maybe they should have went with the director. More sounds to me like he might have been on the right path. I agree. I think they totally should have as well. I think he was totally on the right path. I agree with you. And we were probably robbed of a lot of good Godzilla movies because of that. But you know what? The guys, who put up the money, they make the call, and we weren't there at that time, so there was really nothing for us to do. But it does get me to wonder in a parallel world, what Godzilla movies were we robbed of? Have you seen the OG Godzilla movie, Miss C? He definitely was not a joke in that movie. Maybe you would have liked that one. Haven't seen this one either. No worries. Not a lot of people have. No, I haven't. Not Trenchy. I think if I remember, Grande did a Godzilla special and said the OG was really good. That's absolutely correct. So you guys are talking. There was a movie called It, The Terror from Beyond Space. It was basically inspiration to Alien. There's a lot of movies that inspired Alien. This one, though, from like the egg standpoint and some of the dialogue, I was like, wow, a lot of this, I totally think Ridley Scott saw this movie. I really do. Yeah, I would just avoid King of the Monsters. Okay. I'll check it out on Tubi. Okay, very cool, very cool. As we get to our final film of the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, and I guess a victory lap for this one because it was The Sole Survivor. And this, of course, from the year of 2006. This is Abominable. Yes, Abominable from the year 2006. Brief plot synopsis. A man crippled in a climbing accident returns to his cabin in the woods as part of his rehabilitation, but he wasn't prepared for the imminent onslaught. Yes, of course, Abominable. Now, this was directed by Ryan Schifrin, and if that last name sounds familiar to you, yeah, you're right. That is the son of musical composer Lalo Schifrin. Lalo Schifrin, of course, I always point to the Amityville Horror, one of my favorite horror scores of all time. But Lalo did hundreds of good scores. I mean, I love Lalo Schifrin. And Lalo Schifrin does do the score here. So if you're curious to hear what a 2006 score of a Lalo Schifrin, soundtrack will sound like of a movie that his own son wrote and directed, look no further than here. Lalo's son directs this. And unfortunately, never got another job as, making a major motion picture, did Ryan Schifrin. But that's not to say that this movie was a failure, because I really liked this movie. This is basically tells the story of Matt McCoy, who you might remember from movies like Deep Star 6. I always really liked Matt McCoy. He is this guy who's trying to come over like personal trauma and personal grief. His wife and he were in a climbing accident, and basically the wife did not make it out alive. He fell and got crippled. So he's crippled from the waist down. He's massively depressed. He doesn't want to live anymore. And of course, his therapist says, "Hey, why don't we send you up here with one of our helpers, and we'll send you back to where you were. We want you to, go back to where you were and kind of overcome your personal grief and drama." And basically he goes up there, and at first he's kind of bummed out. Then, of course, these people in the cabin next door, these like young women, some of them young, really hot. Of course, Tiffany Shepis, for any like C-level movie horror fans and anybody that likes sleaze in their horror, Tiffany Shepis is in this, and yes, she's naked as always. Tiffany Shepis is in this, of course. You have let's see, what was the other female's name? Haley Joel is in this. Karen Aaron Chung, Natalie Capongo, some really good looking women in this. There's no doubt. They kind of move in next door. They're going for like a girls' weekend. And basically the whole idea is the abominable Yeti, Bigfoot snowman, if you will, is out in the hills. And it's picking off these people one by one. And only Matt McCoy seems to see it. So it's a similar like kind of Rear Window mixed with the Bigfoot movie. There's also some horror royalty in there. You have Lance Henriksen. You have Jeffrey Combs in a brief cameo, which I always love to see Jeffrey Combs chewing up scenery. He and Lance Henriksen have a scene together, which I just loved. It's them in a campfire telling stories back and forth. I was like, this was brilliant to throw this in there. I thought that was great. But again, I thought special makeup effects wise, this one really, really shined. There's really not much CGI here, but I thought the usage of Bigfoot was really interesting because there's a lot of Bigfoot movies. Not a lot of good Bigfoot movies. I mean, I know a lot of people like Night of the Demon. That's fine. I know a lot of people, Bigfoot County, whatever. There's a lot of Bigfoot movies. Not a lot of good Bigfoot movies or Sasquatch movies, if you will. This is one I would say is one of, if not the best Bigfoot movie out there because of the kills alone. There's a great scene where Tiffany Shepis, she's getting out of the shower. She's naked, drying off the yits. She looks in the mirror. And Matt McCoy is looking, and you're thinking, oh, he's being a peeping Tom. No, he sees the fucking Sasquatch like right outside her mirror. And basically he's like, no, he's banging on the window, stop. And basically the Sasquatch breaks through the window, grabs her by like her hips, and just pulls her out, and she folds up that way. In similar vein to like Freddy versus Jason when the guy gets bent in the bed backwards. I thought that was a tremendous kill, and it never cuts away. I was like, whoa, like that is absolutely crazy. There's the great scene where it stalks down Lance Henriksen, Jeffrey Combs when they're around the campfire, and they're just aimlessly shooting to try to hit the fucking thing. I thought that was really like creepy and suspenseful. I thought, some of the other characters, the female characters, they get some brutal deaths. There's the one guy that's the help that's just this evil bastard. He's like teasing Matt McCoy and, you said, he was like horrible at his job and like kind of poking the bear a lot. And basically what happens is at one point he goes to stop him. He goes and hits him with an axe, the Yeti. And the Yeti turns around and like bites the guy's face off. And it's insane how he bites it off and all this gore comes out. It's a great practical makeup scene. I thought that was really good. Now, that's not to say the movie's without its faults. There's a lot of filters on the movie that I was like, why? Like, what the fuck did this add? There was so many scenes where they added like a blue filter over the movie, and I was like, why in the hell are you doing this? Like, it just doesn't look right. It looks so weird. But he does it a lot, and I guess, I don't know, maybe he was just trying to be artsy with that. It create a cold mood. It didn't work. Like, it just really was kind of odd. But I liked, to me, that the monster here was much more of a metaphor for Matt McCoy's character overcoming his personal trauma and grief. And I thought that was the smarts of this movie. Whereas, okay, it's a device, it's a monster movie. We're still going to get the yits, the gore galore, but we're also going to tell a story about a man who lost the one person he loved the most and his wife. He lost his ability to walk, but he regains his fight, heart, will, and ambition as this, it comes down to this one woman and him against the big bad Bigfoot. And they kind of battle him. And I kind of liked it. I thought that was kind of cool. There's a kind of fun scene where you think they've killed him and he hasn't. The whole kind of finale, it does get a laugh where we realized there may be more than just one Bigfoot, slight spoilers, but I thought that was got a chuckle out of me as the movie kind of winded to a close. I don't know. I thought Ryan Shepard did a good job here. I definitely think as a feature film, as a directorial debut, this was pretty impressive for what it was. I don't think it was anything great, but I definitely think in terms of Bigfoot movies that it actually was pretty damn good. And I just thought this was pretty solid overall. I didn't have many complaints. I mean, some of the acting, sure, not the greatest. Some of the filters, sure. I mean, first time director's not going to get everything right. But the music is good from Lalo. I thought the music was good. I thought the pacing was good. I don't know. I thought overall this movie did work as a whole for me. So this is one that I highly recommend. I think this is a good one. If we're ranking these tonight, let's see what we would do from a ranking standpoint. I'll go with the Blob at number 1. Then I'm going Godzilla versus the Smog Monster to very close to. I would go this at number 3. No. Creature of the Black Lagoon at number 3. Then this at number 4. Then we go Blood Queen, and then we'd probably go Mosquito. That would be how I'd rank these 6. But those first 4, I think, are definitely worth watching, like for sure. And Blood Queen, if you're interested in like the Alien, what inspired Alien, I guess, it's definitely worth the watch in that way. Let's see where we were. I don't know where we were. I think we were here. I think Cooper Glover checked in. Hey, Grande. Hey, Cooper Glover. Hope all's well with you, my friend. What's going on? We got Russ in the house. Good brother Russell. Hope all is well with you, buddy. Bigfoot movies are usually a disappointment. Yeah, no, I agree. I thought for sure. I was like, I remember when I first watched this, I'm like, this is Bigfoot movies usually suck. But this one I thought was fun. It just had everything. It had a lot of kills. It had a lot of gore. It had a lot of interesting, like, personal trauma. Like I liked the story. I thought the trauma aspect of this one and the horrors of getting over the grief elements and trying to move on with your life and using the monster as a metaphor for that really worked. It shows that you could use a monster in so many ways, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about this whole Monster Smash that we did tonight is, we look from the 50s all the way to the 2000s, right? In the 50s with the Creature from the Black Lagoon, I don't think there was the whole personal love triangle there or the love angle there between he and Julie Adams. However, over time, it's sort of become that. It's transcended into that. And it's a beautiful thing. You look at the 60s and the Blood Queen. Yeah, no, that didn't pan out at the time. Wasn't a big hit, but it eventually, inspired something like a Ridley Scott's Alien. Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Yeah, it wasn't a hit at the time. But again, it fucking was so innovative and creative and grand on its own 2 legs. The Blob wasn't a hit at the time, but so revolutionary for what it was trying to do. And it's become a big cult film. I like to see the evolution of it as the decades go by. And you do see that a lot of these movies, some of them that we talked about here tonight, were not big hits and do not get talked about very much. But I do think they have some merit at the end of the day. And that's why, it was fun to do this. Great films. Thank you, Russ. I appreciate that. Blob, definitely number 1. I would agree. That's my number 1 for this, for sure. Also, Monster Mash and Grande. I'm going to have to check out some of these out. Mosquito sounds like a blast. Perfect for cheesy horror soul. Yeah, no, I think you would like Abominable and Abominable and Mosquito the best. I think the 90s and 2000s ones I totally think would be right up your alley. Abominable is on Freevee or like Amazon Prime. It's free. You can watch this free as well. And MVD put out a pretty good Blu-ray of it as well. People saying hi. The Blob, Steve McQueen's film, saw it at 6 years old. Holy cow. Well, I'm talking about the remake, but yes, that is the original from 1958. Blob was Steve McQueen's first film. That is wild. But yeah, no, everybody, thank you so much. I mean, it was fun to spin the wheel of torture with y'all and talk all things monster movies. Now, of course, like I said, I will be back next week with a Stephen King special, which I'm really, really happy and excited to be discussing. Of course, like I said, it's going to be Salem's Lot from 1979, Tobe Hooper's film. It's going to be, of course, The Langoliers from 1995, directed by the great Tom Holland. Of course, Rose Red, which I've never seen before. It'll be a first-time watch for me this weekend. I'm very excited to get into that miniseries. And lastly, but not leastly, Salem's Lot, the remake from Gary Dauberman from the year 2024, just came out literally this month. So I'm very excited to discuss all things Stephen King's next week. Of course, we're going to be doing a roundtable that following Saturday, and then the big Halloween party bash on the 31st, that Thursday. So I'm very excited for that. Let me click on your comments and we'll get out on the road here. Great to have been here with you and everyone. James, always great to have you, man. Thank you so much for checking out the show. Yes, I know. Great show, man. Really fun. Trench, man. Always good to see you back in the building, man. Don't be a stranger. G-Night, good night, Chat and Grande. Good night, Russ. Long live the king. Bow down to the king. I know you're a Triple H guy. Thanks for the info, Grande. I'll look into it. Awesome show. Absolutely, Missy. Be in touch. If you watch them, let me know. Scaring the little girl. Oh, I'm so excited for that, man. I'm so excited to watch Mr. Toomey rip up paper and shit. Yeah, we'll get there. Two sweet peas. Absolutely. All right. Well, you know what? If Cooper Glover says it, we'll have to do the outro. So, everybody, thank you so much. Have a safe, happy, healthy weekend. We will catch you next time. Only on the Graveyard. Two sweet peas, and we'll catch you next time. Good night, everybody.